Thank you, Caitlin, and I certainly enjoyed the video and being able to look back at on some of these fights, several years going on some of these fights and seeing all the people there with us. So tonight we're excited to have three special guests, national leaders in the ballot initiative and democracy world joining us. But before we do that, I want to give a brief report on the work that the Ballot Fund has supported the last 3 years and the impact that that work has really had on Missouri. Since launching in 2016, the Ballot Fund has raised $675,000 to support our direct voter contact work on issues. Those resources have allowed us to engage over 1,500 volunteers who have gathered over 180,000 signatures to bring issues to the ballot and then speak with 375,000 voters over the phones and on doors and in texts to ensure the successful passage of those issues. That is a lot of work by a lot of people, and we are really, really proud of that work. But we are even prouder of the impact that this work has had. The issues that the Ballot Fund has passed have meant higher wages for 677,000 Missourians. It has meant closing the healthcare coverage gap, delivering insurance to 230,000 Missourians. It has meant limiting the influence of special interests and improving elections for each of Missouri's 4.2 million registered voters. It has meant a better economy and a better democracy for Missouri. And it is because of people like everyone joining us tonight and events like this that we have the power to be able to do it. Tonight, we have a goal of raising $25,000 to keep us moving forward for November. I'm going to provide some periodic updates as we go through just about how we are doing. And we will probably put the link on how you can donate in the chat box. We'll probably put it there multiple times. And we hope that you'll use it. With the generosity of our host committee that you saw at the beginning, we're already over a third of the way to our goal with $10,000 in contributions for tonight. And that's really wonderful. But now I want to start by introducing our first national speaker. Chris Melody Fields Figueredo is the Executive Director of the Ballot Initiative Strategy Center, BISC, as it is often referred to. This mission is to strengthen democracy by implementing a national progressive strategy for ballot measures rooted in building state-based power. They have been a key partner of Missouri Jobs with Justice for several years, helping us develop into, frankly, the highly effective ballot initiative team that we are and delivering these victories to Missouri. I'm honored to introduce Chris to offer her thoughts on Missouri and Missouri Jobs with Justice. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Richard, and I am so deeply honored to be with y'all tonight to celebrate the work of Missouri Jobs with Justice. That video was highly motivating and just so inspiring, and I feel like Missouri just produces really great videos. I remember something that Molly Fleming from Move shared, I don't know, sometime during this very long year that we've had, and I'm just so deeply in so much gratitude for everyone in Missouri. Like Richard said, my name is Chris Melody Fields Figueredo. I'm the Executive Director of BISC. And Missouri Jobs with Justice has really been a key partner of ours, as well as the Missouri Coalition, over the last several years. We've been able to see firsthand how you're not just running really great campaigns rooted in the most impacted communities that we saw in that video, but you also have a long-term vision of what it takes to build an equitable and just Missouri. You know that an election and a campaign alone will not transform power and people's lives. And we've made really tremendous progress since 2016 all across the country to transform our economy, our democracy, the criminal legal system, and so much more. And y'all know this firsthand in Missouri, when voters overwhelmingly passed Clean Missouri and minimum wage, as well as defeating the so-called Right to Work initiative in 2018. And early this summer, Missourians passed Medicaid expansion, which I'm so glad to join my friend Jonathan Schleifer from the Fairness Project with, who worked so deeply with y'all on that. And as a result of our success in passing these people-centered progressive ballot measures, we've seen unprecedented attacks on direct democracy all across the country. In the last 2 years alone, 218 bills have been introduced into state legislatures aimed at creating more barriers to the ballot initiative process, the people's tool. For the past 2 legislative sessions, Missouri has had a record number of legislation introducing really harmful changes to the process, from creating a $500 filing fee or creating different thresholds for passage. And one thing about Missouri Jobs with Justice that y'all may not even realize is their deep work to protect the process from these frequent and growing number of attacks. And we are so, so very proud to partner with y'all. Y'all are a leader in Missouri through your incredible work, convening coalitions with community-based organizations, labor, and others to implement what we really need in the times that we are living in, a bold strategy. And we have to build relationships all across the state and across the aisle. Over multiple cycles, you have organized progressive infrastructure to understand the lobbying against these really, really harmful bills. And you've held in-district meetings with legislators to develop a social media toolkit and so much more messaging. And as a result of that phenomenal work, no bills have been enacted that would make harmful changes to the initiative process. But unfortunately, the desire to undermine the will of the people didn't stop. And an amendment to repeal Clean Missouri goes before voters in November. Protecting our democracy is hard, but it is incredibly necessary work, and it has to happen every single day. It is really hard to secure funding to protect the integrity of the ballot measure process, but if we want to protect the people's tool, their ability, our ability to make bold policy changes, your financial commitment is incredibly important. The work of Missouri Jobs with Justice and progressive allies all across the state who are on the ground working to protect the voice of the people at the ballot is more important than ever. We are in an environment where our opposition is working hard to take away the people's tool. So I want to really thank Missouri Jobs with Justice for asking me to be here tonight. Through your amazing, phenomenal work. And I'm committing $250 for tonight for your fundraising efforts. So I'm going to turn it over to my friend, Jonathan Schleifer from the Fairness Projects, who we work very closely with as well at BIS to talk about your most recent victory.
Thanks, Chris. It's always hard to follow you. I just want to take a moment and just take it all in. I'm Jonathan Schleifer from the Fairness Project. Nice, thank you for having me here. I'm so excited to be able to talk about the work that we've done with Jobs with Justice. A little background of our history together. At the Fairness Project, we like to say, and our work, much like BISC, is solely focused on using, as Chris says, the people's tool, the ballot initiative, to go around the broken political system to get things done when they really can't be accomplished otherwise. And we like to say that rule number 1 for us is win, and rule number 2 is don't lose. Because if we lose, then we give the other side a terrible talking point, right? They are able to claim that people aren't with them, even if there were lots of other things that may have been standing in the way of a win. And so when we consider a campaign, and the Fairness Project's role is as early funder, and we provide technical assistance throughout the campaign in partnership with local groups. And so when we look at a campaign, we look for 4 things. We look to see if the policy is deeply impactful. Is it going to change the lives at scale? Second is we look to see is the public supporting it. So that means investing in polling. The third thing we look to see is if there are the resources there for it, the money to fund the ballot initiative so we can win. And the last thing we look for is a grassroots coalition. And that's kind of what I want to, because what I want to talk about today, because JWJ has made it so easy to check that last box for the two campaigns we've worked on together, minimum wage and Medicaid expansion. And thinking back, and there's a part of the minimum wage story that isn't really out there. And hopefully I know journalists on this call, but basically the polling for the minimum wage ballot initiative was not looking good for a long time. And as the Fairness Project and some other allies, the funding space, were thinking about, is it worth investing in minimum wage in Missouri? The polling wasn't there. And in many other states, that would be disqualifying. But what we saw in JWJ was a deep commitment to the issue, a rigorous organization that was going to work their asses off to get it done, that was going to be able to change hearts and minds through their efforts, and that was going to lead the way. And so even though, of our 4 criteria, the polling just didn't look like it was going to get there, we had such faith in JWJ and the leadership that we decided to make an investment in that minimum wage ballot initiative. And thank God we did, because a few months later, we had collected the signatures. A lot of work was done by JWJ, and the polling started getting better. And had we not had the faith in the team there and had been so inspired and had been so certain that the team in JWJ could pull this through, we never would have gone through with minimum wage, and the wage would not have gone up. And so when we started talking to you all about what was next, and I actually remember talking to Richard at a BISC conference while we were in the middle of the minimum wage fight, and we were like, all right, what's after minimum wage? We haven't won it yet, but this has been such a great, it's been such an inspiring relationship to be a part of, that the Fairness Project was looking to do more in Missouri, because we loved working with this team. And so, we had already been working on Medicaid expansion elsewhere, and Medicaid expansion just seemed so right. And it was just so easy for us to go from one to the other, from one issue to the other. And, we won the minimum wage, we won Medicaid expansion. We're looking for what's next already. We're excited to figure that out, because we're not slowing down. And I think, it really has been from Laura and Richard and Caitlin's leadership that has just made it so easy as funders to say, we can trust that the right decisions are being made on the ground that are going to do 2 things. One is that it's going to lead to a win. To go back to rule number 1 is win, rule number 2 is don't lose. We know that the decisions that are being made on the ground are going to lead to a win. The second thing, and this is something that Chris and the folks at BISC have really helped make clear, is that not only are we leading to a win on the second Tuesday in November, but that the efforts that we invest on that day are being carried forward in building sustainable power from cycle to cycle in the ballot space. And maybe I'm not sure what the electoral status is of this call, if I'm allowed to say this, but also building sustainable power that impacts and empowers progressives at every single level, whether running for office, whether they are trying to build their own movements, whether they are taking on issues that we're not even discussing today. So I think what's so exciting about this work we do together, and why we want to keep coming back and investing in Missouri, and is because JWJ is there, because we know we win on election day, and we know that all the efforts that we put in don't just go away the day after we win, but they're actually being carried and sustained by an organization with powerful leadership that knows how to leverage each of those wins into something greater. So thank you so much for having me today. I love being a part of this work.
And for that, I want to introduce Yuri Rudensky. He's the redistricting counsel at the Brennan Center for Justice. I will note, as a 501c3, Yuri is with us tonight to solely comment on the policy implications of Amendment 3, should it pass here in Missouri.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. It's delightful to be here, and it's less delightful to talk about Amendment 3. I wish that's not something I had to do, but nonetheless, here we are. I'm Yuri Rudensky. I'm a redistricting counsel at the Brennan Center for Justice. The Brennan Center is a nonpartisan law and policy institute that works to improve our nation's systems of democracy and justice. And fair redistricting has long been central to our mission. The center was founded in 1995, and I think in 1996 is when we first started working on redistricting issues. We're based in New York City, and that's where I'm coming to you from tonight. And we're a national organization, and we keep an eye on everything redistricting related that's happening around the country. And my work personally on redistricting has focused a lot over the last couple of years on state level reforms. What is going on the state level? And as Richard said, a couple years back, we worked and provided policy guidance and support on Amendment 1 Clean Missouri. And that's what our role is a lot of the time as a national organization, as a policy institute, is to study what is going on around the country, study best practices, talk to people who are deeply engaged, and to find creative solutions that work for each particular state or for each particular jurisdiction. Of course, before the 2018 vote was even counted, and I remember this very vividly, Richard and I were sitting in a backyard patio having lunch, and we started talking about the fact that Amendment 1, should it pass, will be under threat, and it'll be under immediate threat. And that's because in Missouri at that time, there had already been bad proposals introduced, proposals that would fundamentally change democracy in the state. And of course, this past spring, the legislature did pass what was then SJR 38, now Amendment 3, and those fears were realized. And so I do want to talk about Amendment 3 and the threat that it poses. And I also want to talk about our role and the role of state groups like Jobs with Justice. And so Amendment 3 really earns its Dirty Missouri title. It guts all the key protections that Clean Missouri successfully wrote into Missouri's Constitution in 2018, and then it takes it one step further. So first, Amendment 3 weakens protections for communities of color. One of the things back in 2018 that we felt very strongly about was that it was important for states to have independent protections for Black and Brown communities, and Missouri's language is probably the strongest in the country. It protects the political power of Black communities and growing Latino and Asian communities that have for so long been in the crosshairs of both political manipulations and racial resentment. Second, Amendment 3 undermines independence in redistricting. And one of the things that is most important is to make sure that the people that most benefit from the way districts are drawn aren't in charge of redistricting decisions. And so Clean Missouri created a new position of a nonpartisan demographer to draw the maps, taking the power away from very partisan commissioners. And Amendment 3 would revert back to the old system. Third, Amendment 3 renders the partisan fairness protections entirely meaningless. Clean Missouri provided 4 protections to make sure that when districts are drawn, the preferences of the voters are reflected in election outcomes. In effect, Clean Missouri was designed to end partisan gerrymandering, and Amendment 3 resurrects that possibility. Fourth, Amendment 3 deprives Missourians of their fair day in court should unfair maps be drawn. It changes who can challenge maps, where, and when. But Amendment 3 also makes a very radical change that goes more to the foundation of fair representation, something that we haven't seen anywhere else in the country. And one of the reasons why we as the Brennan Center are so invested in the fight against Amendment 3 is because Amendment 3, at least in what the sponsors say about it, is trying to change who counts for purposes of representation. Currently, across the country, everyone is counted. Children, non-citizens, when districts are drawn and political power is divided, everyone deserves representation, even those people who cannot vote, because people use schools, they use roads, they call the fire department when there's a fire, and so equal representation means counting everyone. Missouri has required counting everyone in its constitution since at least 1875. And so Amendment 3 is a departure not just from practice across the 50 states, but its own longstanding history. This is a change that if the supporters of Amendment 3 succeed, would absolutely devastate representation for communities of color. This is because children would be the most excluded category of people from representation, and Black and brown communities tend to have more kids. And so Amendment 3 poses a big threat in state, but it is also the tip of a spear, because we know there are forces at play on a national level that would love to pass Amendment 3 in Missouri and then take the fight to other jurisdictions. And this is what has brought us to the table. This is what has kept us as engaged as we have been. But the reality is what we can do from New York and our role as policy experts is very limited. The real way to win these fights is by building power. And that's what Jobs with Justice does. They mobilize people, they turn people out, they communicate the messages that need to reach the voters so people understand what Amendment 3 would do. And so our work is really impossible without strong in-state partnerships with grassroots organizations like Missouri Jobs with Justice. And sitting here and listening to the economic justice work that Jobs with Justice has done, and hearing other national partners commit to financial support, I, in my individual capacity, not in my capacity as a Brennan Center lawyer, will you know, I have to step up, and I will, as the other folks have committed, will also commit to donating $250. Thank you, Richard, for inviting me, and thank you to Jobs with Justice for all that you do.